What's up, kings and queens? It's your boy Dan from Dark Previews, and in today's video, I'm going to give you a beginner's guide to Props Madness, the key filters that you need to be using to improve your betting skills on NBA player props. Now, if that sounds interesting, then let's go. So we're jumping into Props Madness. It is by far the best tool you can use for NBA player props. If you're interested in checking it out, I've got a 7-day free trial in the video description below, plus 25% discount if you use the code DAFT when you sign up. So for this beginner's guide, we're going to be looking at Jakob Poeltl in this one. The key filters you need to look at really are minutes, dominant play type, dominant shooting zone, and defensive rating. The guys at Props Madness have actually ordered these filters by importance, depending on the prop that you play, to help you out as the user. Now, for Jakob Poeltl, his line's at 13.5. He's covered this in 7 out of 13 games this season, averaging 14.8. Now, you could blindly just go on stats like this and do it based on points allowed to centers, right? You could do that, but not all centers are created equal. They have very different play types. They score in different ways. I think it's a bit foolish to just bet purely by position, which is why Props Madness stands out. The filters and the capability that Props Madness has, nobody else does. No one else is doing play types. No one else is doing shooting zones, defensive rating, and you can't filter those things out. So we're going to be talking about Jakob Poeltl today. And if you've looked at this at first, you'll be like, look, it seems like there's a 50% chance this happens against Boston. Boston, I would say, is a good team. So do we not bet it? Like, there's a lot of uncertainty. Now, when you use Props Madness, it can really clear a lot of things up. Now, minutes, I don't really want to play with the filter for minutes because he's always playing between 25 and 35 minutes. Sometimes he might get 40, but for the most part, his minutes are relatively consistent. The main things I want to look at is his play type. So the dominant play type for Jakob Poeltl, which is DPT, it lets you know at the top here that he's the pick and roll man. His shooting zone is the restricted area, right? Other places where you can get that information is if you scroll down. We've got a shot chart. It lets you know where the players score, and we've got play type analysis. Which different play types do they score from, and how does the other team defend it? What I typically do is when I click on a player, though, I always hover over this. And this pretty much gives me a summary of how the opposition defends the play type and how they defend the shooting zone, right? That gives me a quick look. It's color-coded, so it makes it very easy for you. Now, for Jakob Poeltl here, what you can do is if you play with these filters, you can actually explain a lot of his good and bad games. Like if we just think about his play type, for example, as a pick and roll man, we know that Boston, and you can see it in this blue line, Boston is a very difficult matchup because they limit points of the pick and roll man very well. But you can explain Jakob Poeltl's outperformance by doing this. And this filter changes things where we basically get rid of the top 15 teams at defending the pick and roll man. So he's got easier matchups. So this is when Jakob Poeltl has an easy matchup. You can see he's over this line in 7 out of 10 games, right? Whereas if you reverse that, we know Boston is a difficult matchup. If we just look at the tough matchups, Jakob Poeltl under this line in all 3 games. Tough matchup against the Cavs, Minnesota, and the Clippers, averaging 6.3 points. So it's crazy how playing with these filters can switch up everything. Now, another amazing thing you could do with Props Madness is like you could just do it filter by filter and see how it looks. Or you can even combine them over each other. So this next filter is on shot zones alone. We know that Jakob Poeltl scores in the restricted area right under the rim. We know that the Boston Celtics team, they're pretty much bottom 10. So they're not great at limiting points down there. And we can take a look. When he versus the bottom 15 teams, Jakob Poeltl eats, right? When he versus the top 15 teams, he tends to struggle. Had one good game against Detroit. All the other teams has gone under, right? But where does Boston sit? So Boston are pretty good at limiting the pick and roll, but somewhat weak on defending the restricted area. So we can get a little bit soft with this. So in terms of pick and roll, we might want to get rid of just the bottom 10 teams, right? And when it comes to the shot zone, we might want to get rid of the top 10 teams. Right. And now we're looking at teams that defend the pick and roll quite well, but they also not the best at limiting points in the restricted area. And we can see here, Jakob Poeltl still struggled in these, only went off against the Lakers, who for the most part, when it comes to defensive rating, not one of the best. Out of all these teams, they have one of the worst defensive ratings in the league. So breaking down Jakob Poeltl, what are my thoughts on it here against the Boston Celtics? Using Props Madness, I'd be leaning to the under. Now, there is some contradicting numbers in the data, but for the most part, doesn't seem so safe now. Someone like Jakob Poeltl, when he has a great matchup, the over looks fantastic. He's very consistent in that. when he has a tough matchup, you're probably best to bet the under if you have to. Now, on top of those filters, the shot zone, the play type analysis, another interesting look here are similar players versus the Boston Celtics. And we can see here um, 5 players with a similar play type analysis as Jakob Poeltl have played the Boston Celtics this season. Nick Claxton, Clint Capella, and Jalen Duren. There's really 5 different games. And we can see here, out of these 5 games, these guys covered their points prop only twice. And we know about this Clint Capella one. He went crazy in that game. It was insane in limited minutes. But for the most part, what this is telling me, players like Jakob Poeltl struggle against the Boston Celtics to score some points. So using Props Madness, it now gives me a lean to bet the under for Jakob Poeltl. Whereas someone who's quite casual might look at this and they might say he's hit it in 53% of games, or he's averaging 15, the line's at 13.5. Let's bet the over. Or Boston might lack size on the inside, so let's bet the over for Jakob Poeltl. Or Jakob Poeltl just killed it today. He's had 2 games with 20 plus points. He killed it today. Now he's up against Boston. Let's bet the over. Diving a little bit deeper, I'd have to lean to the under based on using this tool. So that was a quick rundown on how you could use the key filters of play types, shot zones to break down a player's data to kind of predict whether they're going to go over or under in any future games. Very basic tutorial in this one. There'll be a lot more detailed ones as the season goes on. But for now, if it's your first time using Props Madness, that is all I would be using it for. Check out the play types, break it down. When do they have a good matchup? When do they have a bad matchup? And how do they perform against other teams with a similar type of matchup? And that'll go a long way of breaking your bets down. If you have any questions about Props Madness, let me know in the comment section below. And if you haven't checked this tool out, go ahead and do it. 7-day free trial. My link's down below. And like I said, 25% off if you use the code DARF when you sign up. Now let's go.